my moderate behaviour.
There you go. Good. He's promised. You've heard him. He's going to be on his moderate behaviour. We might not get cancelled. Hello, welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and tormentors to that 6+++ show. I name tormentors because I'm joined by one of my regular tormentors tonight. It is the wonderful Nassim Fouchane of Team England. Nassim, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for having me on. How's everyone doing?
Not bad.
Very well. Yeah, it's an exciting time. Looking forward to. We're talking ranged armies tonight. We're talking guns because people who've played against Nassim know he quite likes guns. It's not the only thing he likes. You know, he's a versatile guy. But I think there's some interesting lessons. We've done a couple of series on combat and on list writing. We've had all sorts of lovely people on. This is actually our second Warmaster for this series because we had Raph on before. So
let's go.
Felt like we had to balance it out and have Nass on as well. After Raph was so eloquent and cerebral and well thought out, I thought let's just chuck Nass in there as well.
Balance and Northing.
yeah, exactly that. So that's what we're going to be getting into tonight. Let us know how you in the chat are getting on. We'd love to hear from you. And I will introduce some people, and I'll have made them cross again because I've introduced someone else first. But I'm going to go second now. I'm going to introduce my dear leader, Chris. Chris, how are you?
Wow, upset. But other than that, yeah, I am good.
Forgive me.
My school team took them to a netball tournament today, and we won the whole thing.
Oh, nice!
So that was very we're a small school, right? We're a little village school playing against all these big schools, and smashed it, mate. So we're off to the county finals in a couple of months. So that was very exciing.
Pretty exciting.
But yeah,
Chris just a leader in everything he does.
Exactly that. But yeah, no real life proper hobby progress. None of the good stuff. Just
you're not missing out on much. Trust me.
No. I have not put paint to brush at all in the last week. So, but.
Jealous.
Chris, didn't you release a video that suggests you have been hobbying?
I have been hobbying previous to the previous week. You're absolutely right.
Oh, that's fine. So we're okay.
We'll talk about greater grayness in a bit. But yes,
we'll get to that in a moment.
I have been painting.
Well, that's okay because obviously we've been pretty busy getting ready because we've got our very first GT this weekend. So that's occupied your thoughts quite a lot, hasn't it? So
it's
that's all right.
taken quite a lot.
We'll let you off on the hobbying front.
Yeah.
I'm also joined tonight by the true Archon, our very own Rob Kimpton. Rob, how are you?
Yeah, good. Excited for this weekend. It should be good fun.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. What are you actually running for the event? I haven't asked.
What am I running? I'm not playing. I'm
He's running the event.
Oh, you're TOing? Yeah, of course you are. Sorry, I thought you'd be playing. I was like, Rob's going to win the event. I thought that'd be great. No, that'd be awesome. Yes, so Rob is TOing. That's going to be really fun. So we've got a good little squad TOing. We're going to be commentating. There will be some outfits, which some people in the team are delighted about. Some people are less thrilled about.
There aren't any outfits, just so you know.
There are outfits. Chris can pretend. What I've noticed is whenever there is discussion of the outfits in the chat, Chris pretends it's not happening.
You're absolutely right. Chris does not contribute to the chat in the slightest.
What I'm curious is, would he actually get to the event itself when his friends are all dressing up and be like, I never said anything, I'm not doing it. And that's it.
Well, we're going to find out, aren't we, Tom?
It's a big play, Chris.
I'm excited to find out what happens.
Oh, he's going to be the one guy not in cool 40k dress up with his mates.
Oh, man. Joke's on me. What an idiot I'm going to be. Oh.
Yeah. That's going to be really fun. The outfits are spectacular, so everyone can look forward to that. Right, all right. What we're going to do is we're going to read through the chat. We'll do a tiny bit of self-promotion because we are very good at self-promotion, possibly the best. And then Nass is going to teach you how to shoot people.
I mean,
it's going to be good. So we've got in Martin Dorr is in, the lovely Alex Fowler. Angron is in. Martin Dorr is chatting with Angron, asking Angron how he is. Never ask Angron how he is. That's always a terrible play. Sam Dunn is in. Crazy Warboss Gaming is in, saying who let Nassim on? We did. It's going to be okay. We're going to be okay. No one's going to leave the team after this in disgrace. It's going to be all right. As long as we just. To be fair, I should have thought about this when I've got like a data slate week. The scene is set for a complete disaster that cripples everything. Just because NASA's been there before when it's all gone wrong.
Oh God.
We've got BCG Cypher in, and there's some chat about noise marines. Nas doesn't know anything about that. Nothing to say about noise marines. Gordon Chung says the big guns in tonight. Yes, he is. He's the young gun. That's what he is. He's our absolute killing machine for Team England. Zeroed is also in. Arad is in. Excited to come to the event on Saturday. Jack Tite, our nemesis, is in, saying, "Can't believe you got the second best player on Warmasters on." Well, I said, Jack, we already had Raph on, so we know we're working our way down. We'll get to you eventually. I think Andrew Bourbon's next
again.
Yeah, Andrew Bourbon next, then Gustav. And James Pilkington.
Definitely Gustav before Jack.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. But obviously, I feel like Destiny surely decrees that our nemesis Jack Knight should win our GT. Surely. He must be under a lot of pressure to go and deliver the
Hero
goal.
of Cambridge.
Yeah, yeah, exactly that. And we've got Aidan Brocklehurst in. He says he's busy building stuff that might be shite by the weekend. That is a very real risk right now, Aidan. So Godspeed with that. Wish you all the very best. So we'll take it to a self-promotional place. There's not a ton to report, but obviously we do have the event. Chris, is there any final last boat out of Saigon tickets for this event still
Well,
going?
you know what? There are, in fact, we've had a few drops over the course of the week or two, and we keep getting people in. We're currently sat at 53 people. We can have an absolute maximum of 56 to enable the streaming setup. So yeah, ideally 1 or 3 people go buy a ticket right now, and we can promise you a whale of the time. Everyone's kicking off on the group chats, on the WhatsApps we've got for it at the moment. So there's a lot of fun chat. And just so you all know, to enable the maximum amount of time, just in case the data state arrives at some point in this week, which rumor has it may well be doing, according to Games Workshop. We are in fact having our list submission at midnight on Thursday.
Oh, let's
nice. Yeah, so it's going to be the Wild West out there.
So that basically means the group chat is just full of people bricking it because they're like, I don't know if my army's good. We've got someone flying over from Brussels, hoping that their army's packed. Hope it's legal. Hope they've got.
That's absolutely incredible. That is absolutely incredible.
So yeah, I would hazard a guess that we will probably be the largest event in the entire world to be using the brand new data slate this weekend. It's a good shout at it, right? You know, for 50+ player event this late in the day, who would be crazy enough to allow a data slate? So yeah, if people are interested, it's still going to be. It's obviously still in Barnsley with the wonderful Prestige Wargaming. We've got so many fun things. Like, look here, this is we got 6-7 different trophies this year. Podcast listeners, sorry about this. We've got the beautiful first place trophy. If Nassim was coming and not doing something else, he would have had a shot at winning Best Imperium, which is this cool skull type thing.
He could have had a servo skull.
But there are also quite huge cash prizes as well, or voucher prizes going on for all sorts of different people, not just the people who do well with the army on the tabletop. So yeah, really exciting. We've got a nice little goodie bag. We're going to be down there, some of us on the Friday, setting up, maybe doing filming battle reports.
Yep.
And then the Saturday, Sunday is going to be really good fun. We've got lots of tables booked out at a place called The Botanist, so we're going to have a nice social. It's going to be a great time. So yeah, check out our Facebook page. And
if you're attending or you're in the area, come and say hello. And that is my direct message to all of you attending the event. We want you to all come and say hello. We want to know who you all are. We want to meet all of you. So do be friendly. We will be trying to be as friendly as we possibly can and get to see everyone. But obviously, it's a busy event, so yeah, come and say hey. And obviously we've got David with the stream. Will be really fun. The plan is to have the whole content team doing different bits of commentary. I am very excited to watch some of my teammates do commentary after the event itself and see how that went. I think it's going to be really fun. I think there's going to be all sorts of nonsense. And we'll try and cover a bunch of weird and wacky armies before it all gets really serious on Sunday, and then we'll be like, oh, let's kill people and get in the zone. So yeah,
shoot them to death.
Shoot them to death, exactly, using tips from this very episode. So you might get some crucial info that you need to get you through the 6++ GT this very night, thanks to Nassim. So I guess the other big promotional note to hit, Chris, would be From Grey to Greatness, which obviously launched today. Do you want to take people through that a little bit?
Well, I mean, technically it launched about 4 years ago. It's been
that is actually true.
One of the very first series of videos that we did alongside Battle Reports as a channel many years ago was From Grey to Greatness, in which the idea was Lee and myself wanted to start a new army. We were like, well, let's do it as video. So I did the AdMech, and the idea was it tracked my hobby progress and my playing progress with AdMech. It just so happened, guys, at the time that 1 month after I did my first video, the AdMech book in 9th edition came out. And as we know,
coincidence,
that book turned out to be quite good, rumor has it. And the videos featured me building and painting a plane, and then another plane, and then even more plain.
It's very opportunistic of you, Chris, and I can't wait to start orcs for this series, and I think they're going to be a lot of fun.
And Lee did Slanesh Demons, and so the idea was it's just basically a vlog of us tracking our hobby progress, a bit like the Tale of Four Wargamers, but rather than it all bunged into one video, because then it will definitely fail, we're going to do our own video series. So, for example, myself, I'm doing Blood Angels. I released the first video today, and then we've got Tom doing Orcs.
Yep.
Rob, you're on Eldari.
Yep.
We've got Jack Chapman on Guard. We've got Ben Pierce on Emperor's Children. Ed's doing Space Wolves, apparently, for now.
He's on a conversion mission with Space Wolves. He took one look at the existing range and was like, absolutely not. and he's doing his own.
So yeah, and hopefully it'll just give you guys a bit more of an insight into us, like hobbying and stuff. However, Thomas, we want our dear members of our community to get involved.
We 100% do. So the model for this is very simple. Our plan, we're going to make a video a month for 6 months, and then we're going to do some kind of event, little in-house tournament, whatever it is to celebrate at the end. We'll work out the details later. You, the community, you know that you have projects you've not finished. You're just like me. There's an army that you meant to start at Christmas last year, and you bought that box. In fact, you bought 2 of them, and then you just forgot about it. And now you've got squigs everywhere, and you don't know what to do about them. So you should come with us on this journey. And what we're inviting you to do, we've got in our Discord, links in the description, etc., etc. We have set up a Grey to Greatness area. And what we would like you to do, if you're interested in coming with us on this journey, it's the same as us. So every month, pipe up with some photos, a little bit of video of a model, whatever else, and just sort of start chipping away at this project that you've got, something that you're excited about, something that you've been meaning to get round to for ages from the pile of shame, and just start building up that army. And we're not setting huge lofty goals on the rate of progress. It's like it can be like a unit or a model a month, whatever you feel like. But take us with you on that journey. We want to get updates from you. We're going to have a community roundup video every month. So we will compile all the stuff you guys have been doing. We'll show it off. We'll talk about it. We'll slag it off if we think it's bad. Or Chris will. I'll be positive because I can't paint, so I would never throw stones. I wouldn't dare.
I absolutely will.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get Nass on to slate it as well because that's it. Nass will needs more gold spray.
That's right here.
Yeah, he's always got it. It's like in his holsters at his side. So essentially, I think we all have those projects that we've been meaning to push through. This is a bit of a sort of community, encourage each other, support each other, see what everyone else is making. Should be really good fun. And if you come with us on the full 6-month journey, if you paint up a bunch of stuff, as I say, we're looking at some sort of in-house / invitational event at the end of it to celebrate. If you've been with us the whole way through, you've painted up a nice army, there may well be invitations to come and play as well. So that should be really, really fun. I think it's well worth getting involved. I mean, so, Nash, do you want to spray paint a whole gold army and come and play? You'd be very welcome.
I mean,
how are those custody dreadnoughts now?
Here's a little engineer dude. As you can see,
there's purple on him. To be fair,
he has at least 3 colors.
You have basting,
and he is based. He is battle.
There's a related story which is just literally an hour before Team England are playing WTC.
Nonsense.
There is a sort of panic gathering in the hotel as people are putting wash on Nash's. Now I will never forget. You've got Vic VJ there putting wash on Bulgrin with this sort of slightly disappointed look on his face. Like, I can't believe it's come to this. It was a real moment. Nass was absolutely livid because he did not want the intervention. He was like, "It'll be fine." Everyone else was panicking. We got it done. Went to WTC. The Bulgrin did very well, so it all ended well.
Exactly.
But very, very funny. Yeah, absolutely. So that is from Grey to Greatness. Strongly encourage you all to get involved. We will post some links and reminders and how you can get involved. But come and get in the Discord and just start. Yeah, just grab those models you've been meaning to do for ages and get started. That is very much my plan with the Orcs. I've got a bunch of stuff that's just sat there. I'm pretty confident it's not meta, but I'm going to start chewing away from it and then I'll get some more stuff later on.
Not meta.
Should be a lot of fun. Yeah. And then I think the only other thing is just do hit the like and subscribe. Leave us a comment. We appreciate all of you. You're amazing. If you want to come with us on the YouTube member journey, we've got a whole bunch of YouTube members supporting us now. It's making life very easy and very fun. So please keep those coming as well. You can sign up and support us financially. And if you're interested in getting some coaching, of course, myself, Chris, Rob, Ed Watts also provide coaching. Very happy to work with you. We've just started a whole new Discord for all our mentees because it's getting wildly out of hand, which is what we're all about. So come and join the party in there. And we've got some new exciting plans for that as well. That, I think, takes us to the main event. Someone's saying, didn't he use Alex's Demon Prince for a bit?
Yeah.
Nass's Lord. I actually didn't tell the bit about Lord Solar. I left that off because that was like there was just Leontus. There was a Leontus that almost was Nass's Leontus at WCC, which would have been quite a thing. But again.
Oh, that guy. Oh,
yeah. Don't get him out. Don't show people.
Oh, hey,
he's so proud.
That is just catastrophic.
Is that what you were planning on using at WCC?
Well, he borrowed another one in the end.
I had another one ready to go.
He brought that one with him as sort of the mascot.
It was like grey plastic.
But there was some concerns about the replacement. There was some concerns about the replacement and like base height and stuff. There was a bit of a panic moment. So then it was like, oh shit, maybe we have to use old Leontus. And then it all worked out. It was okay. Oh my word. Absolutely ridiculous. Right. Okay. We are going to get into the main event. We're talking shooting. You all love it when you're doing it. You all hate it when it's being done to you, but it's a very important part of the game. And there is a man, and he's sat here with us today, who is very good at doing the ranged shooting in the game, to the point that if you've ever been to a UKTC event, you will know that he's happily checking around, seeing how people are getting on after about an hour in those early rounds, because he has applied fast gun very vigorously and got himself a nice break. And so I think today what we're going to do is we're going to just pick through some of the fundamentals as you see it, and then maybe as the guys have questions and ideas as we get into it, we can get into the minutiae as well. I'd encourage you, the chat, to chip in if you have questions regarding playing ranged armies and getting the best out of the armies Nass plays, Guard, Tau, various other things he's played over the recent years. Then do pipe up in the chat, and obviously we'll open up and people can just ask him wider range questions towards the end as well. But let's talk it, Nass. What is the appeal? Why should people be playing ranged armies in the first place? What's the magic for you in taking shooting armies into 40k tournaments?
Well, all right. So first things first. Well, I guess with the shooting armies, because I guess I do have a reputation for playing them. I would admit. I'll complete that. All right. I'm sorry. I'm just lean back and think. So one of the main things I see with shooting army is that you don't really. I guess one of the fundamental differences with melee armies is, usually when you're going in with a melee army, your resource that you're using, you are using that resource. It's like it's gone into your opponent's army. It's killed one or two things in it instead. Whilst with a shooting army, you are able to get multiple turns of mileage out of it. It won't do the same damage as, let's say, a 5-man lord with 5 chosen. If you were to shoot a Leman Russ at that target. However, you will be able to shoot that Leman Russ usually and have multiple times to get multiple activations out of it. And I guess it's a way that your opponent can't really interact with your damage. And can't really stop it outside of the traditional sight lines, which you can play around. But also, I guess realistically for me, it's also just the correct way. It's just the way that makes sense. It just makes sense. It's like unless the melee is so overpowering, we touch upon that another day. But unless the melee is so overpowering, it just makes sense to play at least a form of combined arms approach. But even then, since Borgen have basically fallen through the earth and then catapulted into the stratosphere by GW, you cannot only playing guns and then keeping your opponent at bay. I don't know. It's just the way that works, and especially with a lot of the layouts that we're playing on, like UKTC. On some boards, it's like the firing lanes are better. It's changed a little bit on terrain types like GW. Even on some WTC boards, like certain archetypes of shooting are very powerful. And it's just always been the case. And again, it's just a way to interact with your opponent and do damage to them without always them maybe interacting back with you.
Yeah, and I think that's the killer thing, isn't it? And I think that's actually something, maximizing your activations, because ranged activations are, in a lot of cases, slightly less reliable in terms of the actual output, right? You've got plenty of many melee units where they make up for the fact they're a bit vulnerable in terms of getting there and delivery and whatever else. But the actual, the output is very, very high. But actually, range is a bit riskier. So the key is to get lots of bites at it across a game and maximize the impact of it. And obviously, that's some of the things we'll be talking about today, is how you actually make sure you use your shooting units effectively, because as I say, it's very easy to faceplant with a shooting army, just as it is with any other. You see I've had plenty of games where someone has just not managed to apply big gun in the way they needed to, and then it can really unravel very quickly, because it's an out that if you don't have it, suddenly you're in a lot of trouble. I think it's probably fair to say, isn't it, Nas, we're not living in a pure leaf blower era either now. It's that you have to you have to.
Much simpler when I could run a squad of crisis suits at somebody, touch the upper lip of the UKTC-L, shoot inside, and find fade back behind. That was great. With 2 planes, if you went first,
don't, absolutely catastrophic. Yeah, we remember that time very differently, I think. So it's there's a knack, and there are many different little dimensions to making guns work and getting people out and getting people playing in a way that's going to enable you to actually apply your range damage now. So I think that's definitely an important thing to get into.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what we'll do is we will talk through some of the do's and don'ts. And we might as well pick up John Black's question in the chat, because he's asked, I think, what is the top mistake that people make, or that you see people make, in applying guns, particularly aggressively?
Okay, yeah, I think so. Another thing there's a fine balance, because a lot of the times that when I see people play, is that they either severely overcommit or they severely undercommit, and they don't really understand their damage output correctly, or they don't understand how to layer the damage output correctly into certain targets. So all of a sudden, it means like they'll waste activations. And a good way, and I think a good example of this is the one that most people will understand, is like playing Bridgehead, right? You want to get as much mileage as one of your sound bricks as possible, because they are super lethal. However, they're decently durable, but not too durable. But you don't want to just send them for one all the time. You want to get real mileage out of that unit. However, sometimes people will just put one unit into one target and think, okay, that's enough, and then they don't kill that target, and then all of a sudden that your sound unit's dead, and you've traded for nothing. Or maybe sometimes they overcommit and they put maybe 2 sound squads to kill something, and realistically, if they did the maths, most of one sound squad would kill that target. So then they've kind of lost efficiency with that other sound squad, and then so that's probably one way I see people at least most commonly mess up when they're using shooting units. They're using them too aggressively, and they are undercommitting or overcommitting because they don't understand their damage output and the necessary buffs they need with their damage output to kill something. Because you might need a squad of sounds might do the trick, but they might actually need that with extra AP and ignore cover to do the trick. And people won't do that, those layered buffs to apply the damage correctly.
100%. Yeah, and I think there's allocation of different weapon profiles and getting the interaction between different profiles and different buffs, as you say, right? There is, I think picking one-on-one activations that aren't good or that are dangerous. That's something you see a lot, right? It's like, you've popped out your one thing to shoot this one thing, and then you haven't actually done enough. So now all you've done is expose an asset, which is so confirming kills in range, I think, is really important, and actually deceptively fiddly. And you see a lot of the best players, and I think you're quite a good example of it, will load the odds very nicely in various ways to make sure kills are confirmed. There will be some little guy that can grenade suspiciously nearby. There will be a strip cover option. There will be various different things which turn the odds from swingy into pretty assured.
Pretty likely, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think a good example of it is when you were practicing for Pyro, right? And you were using your Vanguard list, right? Like, I understood what units I had to put into you and how much I had to commit roughly to do a set amount of damage to make sure that your units, even if they were still alive, were no longer like a massive threat to me. But you saw, like, even that process for somebody like when I was playing, I have to take a bit of time to properly think
it's
it out.
very precarious
Really
to get
have
it right.
to, you have to make sure you get it right. But a lot of people will just jump into it and think, oh, this is fine, this should do it. And then when it doesn't do it, they're like, oh,
they get run over.
Yeah, exactly. And then the game ends, which is the other issue with quite a few gun lines, at least a lot of the top gun lines.
I think that's exactly right. I suppose in some ways the value of a gunline type army is that it's going to get to do its thing for 5 turns. If it doesn't, suddenly you've got a real problem, right? Because if it finds itself in like a massive connect turn or a massive tagging turn, that's when it can unravel, because then you're not going to be able to dig yourself up.
No, exactly.
We have a question from Lonely Viva. Also, hello, Nogo Matthew, loves over here. How do you decide which units you need to shoot if you only have a limited amount of activations like Necrons, having 3-4 activations of very high quality shooting? Yeah, it's trickier for some armies, isn't it, to make sure you actually get the right. But I guess that's at list design. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, so parts of it at list design, but it's also realistically, let's say your main shooting is 2 Doomsday Arcs and 2 units of other mythics, right? You've got 2 decent anti-tank units and 2 pretty good anti-infantry units. It's also, I guess, position. One is, which is critical, is positioning those units and making sure where those units are. If your opponent is going to attack a part of the board that you're concerned about, that you can hit back with enough to, even if you're not directly shooting them, you're threatening to shoot them. It's like, example, you've got the Lord and an objective with Zeraz an objective that could revive, and you know that your opponent could shoot your Zeraz. However, if they try to shoot him, probably die and come back, or he might not die. But if they do try to go for that play, that you can hit them back with 2 to 3 of your assets, and all of a sudden they've done that. You've wiped out those assets. Zeraz or another unit is there again, and you're doing the same trick. And all of a sudden, people, when you're playing this game, can't sustain that amount of attrition. They can't lose 3 to 4 units a turn, even if you're Massimo Scialda for three turns. They're not going to have army by turns 4 and 5, and then they just get run over. So it's really understanding the types of profile that you're good into, but also making sure that your units are on the right part of the board, which is the very important part. Make sure that your units are on the right part of the board, and this all happens with deployment, because some armies are faster than others. Like when I have to play my guard, I need to make sure that my Lehman Russes and my Roguls and my vehicles are at roughly the correct parts of the board that I want them to be, because they're not going to get to the other side of the board to shoot down that other angle. So what's down that angle is threatening enough to keep that flank either safe or stop it from collapsing, but also to make sure that my opponent isn't completely disrespecting me, and I've got multiple fire lanes. So wherever they decide to go or push, if I'm playing, especially if I'm playing vs. a melee army, if they wherever they want to stage, that I can attack that staging point with enough to make the staging the staging unit either not super effective when it goes into me, or if it decides to go into me and it's still as effective, that it's move blocked to an extent.
100%. Yeah, and so that I think is especially relevant for an army like Necrons, and we're seeing these very annoying Awakened Dynasty lists where the whole art is in using the little characters out in front to block off things, bait things, draw things out. And so what you get then, because you've got things like the character res and other buffs, is that, and this is actually something that I think, again, if you watch Nas players' armies on stream and other different things, Nas's armies have a way of forcing you into guns, right? There's other stuff happening, other nonsense is happening ahead of the real guns. And in order to interact with that, play with that, deal with that, try and actually play the primary, play the secondaries, that lets then the guns themselves have a relatively easy time. They don't have to go too far in search of their angles. They'll get it because the rest of the game is being played to draw those things out.
Exactly.
And I think that's a big difference. I mean, I think if you think about like something like Warhorde versus Tactical, that's the big difference in the way those play. Like Warhorde is going and getting you. Tactical is like, how do I get you to come out so I can blast you, right? It's a very different relationship when your output is in the range threat as compared to the melee one. I'm curious. I mean, we were talking about some like common mistakes. I'm curious, Chris and Rob, have you got any other sort of common sort of pitfalls in using ranged armies or using ranged units that you encounter?
I think that's touched on a little bit, but setting tempo. So I think Nas was talking about your mixed arms. It lets you hold your shooting assets back while your your shit goes and engages in things. And there's different ways. You don't need to throw your expensive guns forward. I think it's about, you need to be the aggressor almost when you're playing a shooting list, whereas a melee army can really stage. I don't know if you see it any different to that, because it kind of sounds backwards saying the shooting army has to run forward and the melee one's the one that wants to chill.
the burden is on the shooting army a lot of the time to actually force the engagements. Especially what I've found when I've played, because I played a lot of Emperor's Children recently, which is predominantly melee heavy. There's still guns, predominantly melee heavy. However, it's definitely, regardless if you go first or second, it's your incentive as the shooting player, as a person with the, let's say, 60-70% of his army is like output in ranged, to make sure that you're getting mileage out of those weapons. So you need to force board states that allow you to get mileage out of those weapons and forcing a certain rate of attrition against your opponent. Because if you just sit back and you just wait for your opponent to come at you, they're just going to be like, no, I'm just going to stand behind here. You have a lot of guns, and I'll just go out to score my points. If you don't put anything on an objective, and if you don't force a certain board state, they're just going to sit back. And that's what I found when I've played with Emperor's Children. When I've used Emperor's Children now, is some people that have mostly guns. If I just stand behind the wall and they're not forcing me to come out, I'm just going to not come out, or I'll just pop an angle of a rhino with noise moons inside and chip that away and just say, okay, now what?
Yeah,
you can kill the rhino and disembark behind the wall.
Yeah. And I do think in that sense, especially since the game has been balanced over the last however long, it's much harder for shooting armies in that sense. There's a real coaxing out of things that needs to happen and a real proactiveness that is required, and it's quite, because those armies also don't tend to have the best up close, fighting units, etc. It's dangerous. It's poor Paul Grin. Yeah. Oh, well, gone but never forgotten. How about Chris? Anything else from you, mate? Any other kind of common mistakes and errors that you see?
It's aiming more at the beginner, but a thing I'm sure we've all done at some point, which is not got the order of our shooting correct.
Yeah.
We fired something. Oh, yeah, I killed it. Great. My second unit now can't shoot. I'm sure we've all been there as we've kind of learned and developed. And it's just at the start, it's not even in your shooting phase, right? It's in your movement phase. You want to have that plan of, I'm doing these things. You don't want to think like, I'll put some guns over there, you can shoot there. Some guns, I'll shoot over there. And then get to your shooting phase. And maybe you nail the order, but actually you put the stuff in the wrong position to maximize that. So I think it is just about taking that order. Me personally, the first thing I'll do is I'll go, right, what are the guns which can only go into one target, and clear all those inconsequential things out of the way, and then I can spend more time trying to get the order right of the other stuff. But it's just about taking that moment. It's like, you don't, especially in the heat of the moment, or maybe you're running out of time, or maybe the game's getting really close, maybe you're panicking a bit, and you just pick up the dice and you just start rolling. No, just take that little pause and just think, right, what order am I actually doing this in? And I definitely had times where I'm like, I really don't know what to do. Okay, I'll just move over to the other side of the board. I'll clear up some of that shooting, and then I'll come back, and this can be a problem I can reset and rethink about. But yeah, just spending that little bit of time and thinking about the order in which you're firing your gun, so you don't shoot and kill something so it's now out of line of sight. As a more of a beginner tip, but I think that is very useful.
But it's very real, isn't it? In terms of, if you have lined up multiple things, you want to make sure you get the order of activations right. Zeroed in the chat says they played their first games with Tau in the last weeks and got their brain in a proper knot more than once with the order of activations, especially since I ran a relatively short range list. Actually, it's quite hard to play Tau. We don't always allow that to be recognised on this show, because we don't want to give Jack Chapman too much. But genuinely, Tau this edition, it's not been straightforward. It's a precarious game. They're fragile, right? They're fragile. Digging things out is difficult. Although I think players, like I said, having played against Lewis Smith a couple of times, there is you can play a really ballsy, push things out, make things happen version of Tau that can be really, really scary. But you've got to know exactly what kinds of things are difficult for your opponent to deal with that's going to get them out and get your guns firing and everything else. Simon Harris says, expecting to see Mind Goblin sponsoring Naz's painting workshops. I can't wait for Naz to launch his painting workshops. Yeah, exactly. That's going to be really, really good.
This is done. It's got 3 colors on it as well. It's a bit purple.
Nice. There was one other sort of common error, which was one I definitely made a lot when I was learning, which is, and this is more applicable for range v range games, which are obviously a decent chunk of matchups, right? It's not purely range versus combat all the time, but it's understanding and playing the kind of rate of escalation of tools and weapons correctly. There's so many players when a lot of us are like this when you get started. You just want to get the big tank out and start blasting, and then you've killed a land speeder, and now you've lost your big tank, and you're like, I have not scaled up my use of weapons here at all correctly. I think one of the first times I played Brian, was exactly one of those games. I ran out, I shot the wrong thing, and then you're like, now I'm just down on my key shooting, right? And especially in a ranged on range situation, there are lost conditions. You've got a series of killer tools. It's like if these go too early, and theirs have not gone,
it's going to get hard.
It's going to get nasty, right? It's going to get tougher. And Nash is like, I will still win, but I will be less happy about it.
I will be more silent as I have to think more.
yeah, exactly that. And I guess, I mean, in terms of winning that kind of range v range sort of standoff, what are the kind of tricks and tools you've picked up over the years to achieve that?
Oh, so to be fair, those are usually the tougher ones. I find playing with the main armies to actually be the easier matchups a lot of the time. Yeah. So the range v range one. So it's tough because I guess similar into the melee v melee matchup, you want to make sure that you're trading up and that your big key assets are not falling before their key assets, and it's quite tough because I guess an example to give, like Voltan, right? They've got certain key units that they are going to use to shoot to kill your vehicles with, or certain units that you have in your army with. So you want to force a certain profile of like hull. Like let's say, for example, I'm playing guard, right? I put a Chimera with 10 guys on the middle objective on UKTC, and I tell my Voltan opponent, deal with it. What are you going to send to shoot it? And they can very much kill a Chimera with probably not one Sagittar, probably not going to commit one, probably commit 2, maybe 3. So they're like, okay, we've shot 2 to 3 Sagittars. Let's say, for argument's sake, shot 2, killed a Chimera. Oh, but there's still 10 Catachans inside.
Yes.
Do I need to commit something else to this? So, and then all of a sudden, you've created a certain board state where you can punish and you can shoot, as long as you, again, this is where positioning comes in again. You position your damage units in a position where if they try to take a punch at one of your assets, such as this Chimera, then you can hit them back. But there's also the alternative, which is what the Vortan player could do, which instead of sacrificing or using their Sagittars and their damage units, is they'll send out 5 guys, 5 little idiots. But then that's fine, because then what you've done at that stage is you've actually traded nothing for one of their units. So you're starting to increase the tempo of the game a little bit, because now you're thinking, okay, I've killed this unit, I'm going to do it again, or I'm going to do this again here and on this other objective. Over to you. What are you going to do about it whilst you keep all of your key actual damage assets units, whether those be Lehman Russes, Rogue Dawns, Scions, Kassakin, in a relatively safe position, ready to crack back. And just either forcing that rate of attrition in the matchup where you know you have a resource advantage or such durability advantage, or where you think you've got a, where you're going to win the gunfight. Because Vortan, in this example, is also a 18-inch range to 24-inch range army, whilst Guard is more of an 18 to 48-inch range army.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's it. And that's where it's just knowing what the good little early game pieces are. We've talked about a few of them already, right? So, I mean, Seraz is a great example. He's such a good early game piece, because you're like, the effort to deal with him is radically disproportionate. Right, it doesn't. I mean, me and Robin Tricari, we use Urian Rakath for similar nonsense. Right, he's just annoying to kill. He's gonna get back up. So you're like, this is a pest. Stuff is now going to come out and play. And I think with ranged armies, I mean, this was the era of the Iron Hands land speeder was. Brian Sight was doing all sorts of terrible things with Iron Hands at that point. That it was exactly that kind of tool. You need to find these little escalating units that are cheap, cheerful, cause problems, and then be set up. And as I say, all the best sort of range players I play against, all of their real damage is just waiting, and it's going to do the thing. But there's a first dance that happens where we pretend we're playing the game with other stuff. The game gets started, then the real damage begins. Exactly. So you don't want to give away your real damage up front too much. Obviously, every now and again you might be able to just jam your army. A bit different, depends on the matchup. And
I love those.
I know you love those.
Games.
Oh my word! It's just the you and Sacco, the Thousand Suns card one. That's just.
I just get the itch. I'm just like, okay, scout everything forward. I'm behind the wall on all of the objectives. I'm right here.
100%. We've got a few questions in chat. I'm going to pick those up. We've got some love from Vic VJ for the little 40k genius. He's being very nice to you in here, Nas. And he says,
"Oh wow,
Nas is the most positive person I've ever met. Never complains about problems in the game, just finds solutions." That is 100% true. Nas wastes absolutely no time on what has been or might be. Just gets on and finds very, very cool solutions. And then, we got a question from Craig Bedford. What's Nas's actual honest thoughts on indirect? This is great. This is fun. What do you think?
I mean, well, you got to specify the indirect, but so a lot. I mean, I haven't played it in a while to be fair. Proper, like a real, like a man's man indirect, like manticore, classic, when it's on fire. No, unfortunately, it's quite bad. Even the mortars are like, I only added them to my bridgehead list because it solves a specific problem in bridgehead, which was cheap stuff behind walls was screening you, and it was like it's a bit annoying. So they solved that issue. But even in all of my other guard lists, for example, that I've written, or in a lot of other lists that even that have access to indirect, don't really take it. Because playing the back of the board is not how Prior is built to be played. If that makes sense. It's really rewards you for playing the mid board and being able to do a lot of cards in the mid board. The only cards you can do in your backfield are like recover assets. When with an indirect piece, you're not really doing it because you want to get leverage out of it by shooting it. You have something else in your backfield. So I'm not really a huge fan of indirect at the moment. Just not even the mortars outside of bridgehead. I took the Field Ordnance Battery to LVO. Could have done with another Quillon unit. That would have been great. Probably would have won me the mirror. But here I am.
Yeah, I think the reality with indirect now, having I play a few armies that use smatterings of it, it has arrived at what I would say is an appropriate point for indirect, which is that sometimes it doesn't work at all, and sometimes it works. And for competitive players, stuff that sometimes doesn't work at all isn't really the business, is it? Nas? That's not really what it's not really what people are looking for. No, it's not. I think it's kind of arrived at an insurance place, right? It keeps people honest. There are one or two armies that can get more out of it, but when indirect is so good that it's a guarantee, then it defines the game for quite long periods of time. And Mechanica says, I believe our lovely Loman did a perfect example of how to do order of activation with his Death Guard against Innis. Yes, if you haven't watched that game, we did TTS Fight Night last week. I played Death Guard against Innis. We had one of the funniest games I've had in my life. It was described by viewers as when Sideshow Bob steps on all the rakes in The Simpsons, and that was me on my Death Guard against the Inari. And there are just so many moments in the first couple of turns of that game where I'm like, oh, that's gone real wrong. That's a lot of fun. A lot of fun had. Very entertaining game. And we got more shout outs for you here from Simon Harris. Been really fun watching Nassim's growth. Yeah, I mean, he's on a ridiculous trajectory. It's quite scary. You should stop at some point. Nas, chill out, slow down.
But the boy,
leave something for everyone else.
But the boy, still young.
So I think probably because obviously, our viewership, we've got a mix of more up to speed and more new players. I think certainly when you talk to range players and you play against very experienced players, there's a number of sort of aspects of sort of terminology and good practice that you see that I think set apart a very good range player from a less capable one. Right. And I wanted to pick out a few, and if the other guys have ones to throw in as suggestions, then they can. But the one I was going to start with was, and we've alluded to it already, is firing lanes, Nas, right? So let's think about firing lanes in terms of, as a fundamental of playing a ranged army well. What are they, and what are the crucial things to bear in mind in exploiting firing lanes?
Okay, I guess so. A few things. When I guess one of the most important thing is identifying where the fire lanes are on 100%. The board. And how you can and how some firing lanes overlap with one another, and also then the second part to that is identifying. Okay, is this firing lane like a long firing lane? Is like if I draw a line down this firing lane, whether that be on like a certain WTC board or let's say on a UKTC, where you have like your corner on Crucible. If you put a tank there and you move it, you can actually shoot your opponent's backfield home objective like that, wherever's there. Like that's a firing lane, right? Like, and that's and so identifying those, and then identifying, okay, how am I going to get to that firing lane, and being safe on the way there to make sure, like, because you don't want to position yourself where you can like in deployment, like okay, I can draw down this firing lane, but actually I can get shot before I even get to that firing lane if like one of my opponent's guns. And that's what happens when you try to cut specific angles. Because let's say you're playing against Eldar, very fast army. So you want to make sure that you respect their firing lanes for their guns, which for them is more like for anti-tank weapons is quite short firing lanes, right? So they want to be quite up close and personal. So you can usually figure out what that is. And it's identifying which one of your units are best on a certain firing lane. Like you're not going to put a 24-inch range tank up down on your top left in your crucible. You're going to put something that shoots 36 or a bit longer to actually shoot a bit further. And it's the same with on search. You're going to put a tank that's got maybe a little bit shorter range on your on the right bottom part of the deployment, because it's the moment you move it out and shoot the expansion, the range is actually 24 is enough, 18 to 24 is enough. So it's identifying that and making sure that whichever assets you're putting there in those parts of the boards is essentially taking full advantage of the firing lane's length, but also that it can actually get to that firing lane safely, and also identifying is it going to win the shootout a lot of the time against the other thing that your opponent wants to put there in that lane.
Yeah. I think that's exactly right. No, it's knowing what's lurking on their side and what you're going to be dueling with is a big thing, and ideally having different redundancies for that is really useful as well. I do think with seeking firing lanes out, there's the passive lanes. There's the one that will just open up when things get busy, and then there's the ones that if you go looking for, you apply pressure. Right? There's sort of like mid-board type stuff. Once they get out in the mid-board, I'm going to be able to apply damage XYZ, but there's also, if I push down this side, suddenly I'm looking into ostensibly defensive areas. Exactly. So having something to go hunting for those, I mean, your hellhounds are always very good at that. I remember, I think it's there's a difference. There's some tools in your list to go proactively hunting for those really nasty lanes, and then some that are just ready to defend and counterattack and everything else. Chris and Rob, you got any sort of other terminology or sort of key ideas from ranged sort of practice you've encountered?
I think firing lanes, I think you've got to be really aware of your range characteristics for your weapons as well and your opponent.
Yes.
Like if you're playing Votan, you've got a 72-inch Lancer sitting in the back corner, you can just sit there for days and go, you're not going to get me, and you have to come into the middle there. Or I think when we played, we were measuring out 14 inches plus 36 because we were looking at Dark Lancers versus a battle cannon. And I said, okay, one of us we're both out of range, but we've left you just in range. But if you get there, you're going to lose that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you could get there, but if you do, you can shoot me. Luckily, I had indirect then, and that was 120.
You directed everything. So
that was fine. So
good.
So there was that firing lane, which is the board.
Yeah.
That's cool, Chris. Anything else to add in terms of yes? I think firing lanes is one thing, but what other aspects of sort of common terms or common ideas that you encounter in terms of applying shooting?
I said I haven't got a huge amount to add, but I guess I would probably get Nass's opinion on the general shooting thing of if we were to bring it back right to the beginning, which was the list construction. So obviously, let's say you're playing an army which you feel is very strong. How do you go about trying to construct a list? Like, is it a matter of, right, this is the mathematically best gun, I'm going to put 3 of them in, then I'm going to find the mathematically second best gun? Do you have a rough vibe guide on how much or how many points you spend on guns compared to like chaff, or do you always try and make sure you include screening units in a list? Do you need to have counter punch? For me, if I've ever built lists which have lots of guns, there's massive alarm bells of, well, if they get into my lines, I need to have something to like kind of push back into. So like, do you have certain rules of thumb that you try and stick to when you're building your lists, or is it just
there's a rough rule with like, I guess, list building archetypes that I usually have, at least that I've had a lot with Guard, as I've played it a lot over the last year and a half, 2 years. So usually I like to have 2 to 3 expendable units of chaff that can play the turns 1 to sometimes 3, but it's from turns 1 to 2. Like they can play, they can score, they can deny that early, and just create a little bit of tempo and score cards and deny points. And that's in the way of either Catachan squads. My list I'm taking this weekend, I don't have any Catachans. I'm using Defco Engineers for that role because they fulfill a similar role to that. And with a lot of my guns, I like to, well, one, just look at the profile, compare to its points value, and look at the strength values of the weapon and see if it hits any major breakpoints. For example, I'm not going to take volume of Lehman Russ Executioners because of their strength 8, because strength 8 is not a breakpoint of strength that I care too much about. A lot of vehicles in the game are toughness 9 if they're a transport, or T10 up, like basically T9 upwards, which means my tank that I'm spending X amount of points on is not even going to reliably pop a transport. So it's like, and also it might do damage to itself. And also it's also identifying the reliability of the shooting unit. I like a big part of it, like, which is why SANS was so good, right? They had 4 hit, they have 4 wind rerolls, and in Bridger they have ones to hit, so they're quite consistent. They're like a reliable unit. It's like if I point this unit into this, I can expect X because it has a set amount of rerolls. Same thing with Luminous battle tanks. The AP is not great compared to a lot of the other tanks. However, it has built-in hit rerolls of 1. 4 hit rerolls if your opponent's an objective that you don't control. So all of a sudden you are able to offset a lot of the variables of like, oh, if I roll badly, actually I've got rerolls, so it goes back to being fine. So it's identifying which of your units within a reasonable points value are going to apply damage over the course of the game, and one, threaten your opponent. And good range is nice. You don't always need to have a good range. I played demolishes for 24 inches for a while, just because they were just a good value, and just seeing how those guns interact with the rest of my army and how they synergize. Like, I'm not just going to take 2 Luminous battle tanks for the sake of taking them as well. I want to ideally be able to put orders on them. So that means I need to take a tank commander of sorts. Then it's identified, okay, which tank commander is the better one. The Rogodorn's a better one because it can give 2, and its gun is now also strength 12. So that's another key breakpoint in the game, because if I'm shooting against a T12 thing in a game, I can win it on 4s rather than on 5s like the rest of my army is on. So sort of like I'm just making sure that I'm hitting those breakpoints, and if I'm shooting at something that's T10, my Rogona wins it on 3s. My army, because I'm playing combined, also has D4 hits, so it's able to make up for maybe its lack of strength in other places. So I try to identify that and make sure that a lot of my shooting synergizes with one another, one way, just in one way, shape, or form. And that's and I still have that same philosophy with like Emperor's Children. I've got 3 squads of Noise Marines, and I've got 3 Rhinos, because the way I like to use my Noise Marines is I don't want to make sure they're outside of transports early game, because they're just going to get blown up. I'm not going to get much mileage out of them. I would much rather get little, no to little mileage out of them in turns 1, and maybe get some mileage out of them in turn 2 instead of the transports. Maybe not as much as them being disembarked, but then they have that additional protective element to them, and it synergizes quite well, because that Rhino can also hold not just the Noise Marines with the Blastmasters, but it can also hold 5 guys and a Lord. So I can get a lot of mileage and a lot of synergy off those units working together. And that's kind of how I kind of build the lists that have shooting, even if and just to touch on the close combat punch, I'll also try to look at viable units in the codex that have a real combat punch that I think is valuable. But sometimes it might be worth just taking an additional 1 to 2 screening units that can either move block your opponent or charge into your opponent and kind of bog them down for a turn. If there's no good suitable anti-tank, anti-punch elements, especially with being nerfed now, you have to find an alternative. Ogrins don't do too much damage, and they're a bit too squishy if they go into combat units. I'm like, okay, that price point I could spare. I can get another 10 Catachans. After I would have done my opponent, I've shot him a bit. I might not kill the unit that I've shot with my Luminous battle tank, but if I trust their Catachans to do it, or if I advance and move block, I've bought myself a time what a combat and I like basically what a combat punch unit would have done for that same role.
100%. Yeah, completely. I think it's interesting, isn't it? As definitely buying time. If you don't have good combat that's going to actually be able to tangle, then buying time is better. And so whether that's transports, whether that's tens of idiots, all sorts of different things, or just sensible, making sure there's sensible distances between you and what you're being charged at. That's a very important part of the game. We've got a great comment from Quick Play Curran, who was saying having chaff units stand in the key spots to screen melee charges into the valued units, need to be less worried about losing units, not experienced enough to know good trades. And I think this is a killer thing. Like, you don't want to be, I think there's a risk with a ranged army, especially into combat armies, of being tentative, and being tentative isn't useful. As Nas has alluded to, like, there's so many points in like the key bits of the board that you've got to get out there and make the game happen there. But it's knowing what you can get killed is going to get things going and get things in the right places.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing as well, and this is, Nas talked a lot about profiles and understanding profiles. That is really important. It's really important to know what your different range units in a book do. And so the example, the endless conversation amongst GSC players is the Achilles Ridge Runner, right? And I think it is a tank that does not kill tanks. And this is the crucial thing. Like, once in a blue moon, it will kill a tank, but it doesn't kill tanks. It can hurt a tank. Sometimes it doesn't even hurt a tank. And this is people's sort of fixation with it, and the issue people have with it is they're incredibly swingy in one-on-ones with other vehicles because they just are. They got D3 shots on a las cannon, right? It's just an unreliable thing. What they are very good at is killing elite infantry, because that blast keyword suddenly kicks in, and actually suddenly like, oh, this is what it's for. It's actually very good at this. You look at the mining laser and think, oh, this should be killing tanks, but no, it's not. It's an anti-elite infantry gun, and it's very good at that. So suddenly, if you point it at 10 chosen or something like that, it's a much happier vehicle than if you're trying to get it to bounce off a chimera or whatever the hell it is I do whenever I play NAS with them. So I think that's the key thing, is just understanding the sort of nuances of the different units, what makes them sting, where their efficiencies are. So much like reroll hits, situational reroll wounds, you want to get that out of your different units. Things like the Wind Riders for Eldar, you want to make sure you get your angles so it's the only thing they can see, so they get the reroll to hits, all these different things. And that's where just really bedding in with the units that you have and understanding them is going to take them up a level and avoid you using them badly, I think.
No, agree.
Wonderful. Okay, so we've got there's a few questions which are data slate related. I don't know how much you want to go into that now, but is there anything you're expecting in this data slate as regards guards specifically and for the game in general?
Bridgehead nerfed, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable guess, isn't it?
I think that one's fair. It's like,
yeah.
I'm not complaining.
Yeah, I think Bridgehead probably is in trouble. So, I mean, who knows beyond that? Could be all sorts.
Exactly.
Right, so I guess if we're thinking about the other, we covered a few of the sort of intro level things. We talked about firing lanes, we talked about different weapon profiles. I guess, what are the kinds of setbacks you can face or challenges you when you're playing a ranged army? What are the kind of common traps and tricks that people will pull on you to make life difficult, and how do you get around that? How do you circumnavigate the kind of counterplay against ranged armies that people typically like to try?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a few, right? Like, there's a few things that are good, like rules that are designed to be good with a ranged army, right? Like lone operative is probably the most important one, because you can't, let's say you're playing these Tyranids, like I'll play these Tyranids, and I have to be these specific range to shoot you, so you know where I'm going to be to shoot this unit. So what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that you can counterpunch and hit me there. And sometimes what players will do is they will put a lone up on an objective and then also hold multiple other objectives and try to get the range player to overextend to try and deal with all of them. Sometimes you just got to take a step back and understand, okay, my opponent's going to score prime next turn. There's nothing I can do about that. My focus right now shouldn't be to deny his prime. It should be, let's remove as many assets from the board as possible and then ask him, do you want to do that again?
I often struggle after the first try.
It's like you've scored your max primary, you've scored your 15 turn 2, and I'm going to score only my backfield, so I'll score my 5.
Yeah.
But now for that 15, what a lot of players will do is like they'll try and put you in a corner and either wait for you to overextend or misposition and then punish you. Or they will just put lone operatives and objectives and try to force you to deal with those a bit too early. Because like as the shooting player, you never really win their fights. Like turns 1 and 2 with those form of armies, you have to your game plan should be a bit more revolved around turns 4, 5, and I was about to say 6, but turns 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
And basically building your game plan towards that, because a lot of the time those form of armies that want to put into those traps are melee armies. Rather, the other gun line has a similar build to yourself, if not similar, similar to different. Even if you're playing with Space Marines with Vindicators, they're not going to put 5 Marines on an objective to force you to shoot them, because 5 Marines is not hard for a guard army or a Votan army to deal with, and they've just kind of traded that. It's usually going to be the melee army that's behind the wall with like a lone up somewhere, maybe a Lucius on an objective. So it's really identifying when you can extend to maybe deal a killing below turn 1. It's not always possible. Very much most of the time it's not. But it's identifying your win condition in those scenarios and understanding that you don't try and deal with everything at once. It's not going to happen unless your army is completely busted through the moon and all you're playing orcs. And there's also and it's also essentially identifying what can you riskily deal with this turn that is going to deal enough hardship to your opponent, so that even if they do replicate that again turn 2, do they have an army turn 3 anymore?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so standing up, being patient, and recognizing it's a long game, and that as long as we've alluded to several times, as long as you get those 3, 4, 5 turns of activating your key units, and you've avoided losing those or getting those gummed up, then you will be in a very strong position. And sometimes that means ceding a bit of ground, ceding a bit of territory, whatever else. The Vanguard Needs Guard is a great example, because like if you get too gung ho, come forwards too much too early, then the Vanguard gets to do its thing. If you stand off it, blast it, grow into the game, the Vanguard is just a bunch of little nids, so it dies, and that's the way to play the game. Little Griblies, and they get melted. We've got a question regarding Emperor's Children, because obviously as Nass has alluded to, he's been practicing some Emperor's Children, branching out. Sam says, what's your best tip for a melee expert who is branching out into using some range, perhaps 18 Noise Marines?
Melee expert branching out into using some range.
Yeah, so going from combat to having some gun.
Going combat to having some gun. I guess it's a tough transition, but I guess the way to use them is to actually making sure. I use my Noise Marines a little bit differently, but I guess in that way is making sure that your Noise Marines are creating board states where you're actually getting a good amount of mileage from your melee units. And a good example of this that you might not have had before, if you're playing World Eaters, for example, is like 10 man in front of you is a little bit annoying to screen, and then your opponent would be like 4.1 or 6 inches behind it. Now what you can do is you can use those Noise Marines, kill some of those units out of the way, or kill some models, and then charge through those gaps, which is very good, because you couldn't really do that too much with World Eaters. You sort of seen a little bit when people started taking Forge Fiends, but using those Marines in that way to create gaps in your opponent's screening lines to charge through, because then some tricks that you can do, depending on what the type of attachment that you're playing, is that if you're playing Peerless, for example, you charge to the other side of your opponent. So now instead of you being, let's say this is the line here. This is the line here.
Nice.
This is the line here. I'm trying to find a straight line. And so this is the line here, and you're coming through this side, and this is your opponent. It's like if you prod some of those gaps, all of a sudden, instead of you ending here, you end back here, and you're able to consolidate backwards and end up getting a lot of movement out of it. And that's only possible if you're able to chip some of your opponent's assets away, and that's even possible with stuff like Space Marines or with some tough infantry. Because those Marines have pretty good profiles against those, because all of their shooting ignores cover. They have access to quite high volume shooting as well, with the Blastmasters doing the big profile, and they also use those units to maybe kill 5-man Eldari units or 10-man cheap units with your Noise Marines. Where you don't care too much about your Noise Marines in that specific matchup, to make sure that your melee units that do hit harder are going into the juicy stuff later on when they expose that to shoot your Noise Marines or to get an angle on your Noise Marines, and vice versa. Yeah,
absolutely. They're a very cool unit. You will enjoy them, BCG Sam. They are absolute nonsense. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I think
right now.
I cannot imagine playing just pure combat armies. I always have to have some complementary guns. Even like Brood Surge, being able to just flame some nonsense out the way, or crack a transport or whatever else, or try and crack a transport. I'm not going to pretend that happens all the time, but it just it just gives you those little troubleshooting options that make actually applying all your lovely range damage, melee damage, much more effective.
100%. And the prime example there, like you mentioned, is actually stuff into transports. Like you're saying, noise marines to actually pop transports, because transports are usually T8 to 9, which means your blast masters, the big shots, winning them on 3s, and the other guns are winning them on 5. So, and they're all ignoring cover. And depending on the attachment that you're playing, and you can buff that shooting. So you can use that to pop the transport, and then have your melee units go and charge to kill the contents, which you might have not been able to do before.
Yeah, 100%. Zeroed was curious what kind of tool you were holding. Some kind of vertical line demonstration tool. That's a paintbrush.
Paintbrush, God forbid.
And they say he doesn't hobby. Here he is. You know, he's got the paintbrush. He's always painted, always hobby. All right, fantastic. I think we've covered a lot of the main notes that I was looking to cover. So we'll move it to general podcast questions in a second. But I guess as a sign off, Nas, what are the key things? Someone who's looking to get into a ranged army right now, what are the key things they should be practicing and working on if they want to start leveling up immediately? What do they need to be getting sort of zeroed in on to get the most out of a gun army?
I think Chris mentioned it a bit earlier, but definitely making sure that you get your target priority correct. Because if you shoot something in the wrong sequence, in the wrong order, into the wrong target, then you're not going to have a great time. Like I'm going to shoot my las guns at this infantry unit that's actually not too good against that, and I'm going to shoot my bolters. Just making sure that you shoot the right profiles into the right weapons. Ask your opponent what their defensive stats are. Shoot the right guns into them, and then kill them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think getting practice at understanding like general damage outcomes, that's a huge part of it. Like just starting to get that feel for what you can expect when you point X gun at X unit is definitely really important.
Yeah, I think it's critical for you as the player as well to understand what your damage output is into quite a lot of into what's meta in the game. So what is your army good at killing predominantly compared to others, and what are those profiles specifically that are good at killing that? Is this gun better at killing toughness 3 models of like a 4 or 5 up save that are not too durable? Is this gun actually better suited into shooting into a bit more heavily infantry, like toughness 4 with 3 wounds, like marine equivalents? Or is it better into more elite infantry that have 3 wounds? Like, is your army actually good at dealing with 3 wound infantry? Do you have much damage free shooting or combat that's able to deal with that, or on mass damage 1 or on mass damage 2? And identifying what your army is actually good at killing, so that if you end up playing a game like where, let's say for example, none of your shooting is above strength 9 or 10, like if how, for example, you don't bring like railheads, you're gonna have a bad time vs Chaos Knight army, which is all toughness 10, because your army wins that army on 5s. So you're like, actually, this is not great.
Yeah, completely. No, absolutely. The profiles thing is really, really big, and obviously this is where all the sort of the tech and the countering and the designing lists to deal with different problems comes from. Ultimately, I was having quite a fun memory. I was doing a coaching game yesterday, and he was running the scatter laser bikers, and that was the first time I ever teched for anyone in 40k was scatter laser bikers, because I used to play against Scrivo down the road from me, and he was in his 120 Orc Boys era, and I was like, I just keep losing this, and there's nothing I can do. And then my brain just went, oh, that's because I don't have enough shots to kill the 120 boys. And then I went and got enough scatter laser bikes, and was like, you know what? Now this is suddenly a lot easier to deal with. And it's just it's a sort of a journey you go on. You can never, I'd say, you want to try and have a good range of options in your army, but there's always going to be certain skews that will be challenging, but it's just trying to build in as many solutions to as many as the key things that you're going to be dealing with in the game as you possibly can. And watching out for some of those key things, as Nas says. So stealth's a big one. Stealth, you've got to be ready for solutions to stealth, ready for solutions to issues with -1 to hit, or lone operative, or a 2-up saving cover. You've got to find these little niches in your army for dealing with those situations. And the more of those you have in the list, the more it looks like a guard army, I think. Right, okay, so we're going to take it through to podcast questions now. We'll pick some out of the Discord, but do keep them coming in the chat as well. Thank you very much for supporting us thus far. Please do hit the old like, subscribe, leave us a comment. Obviously, if you want to support us as a YouTube member, you are very welcome to do so as well. And keep the questions coming for Nas, but I'll throw some bones to Chris and Rob as well, because they've been here all evening, and that's very nice. They deserve to be able to chat as well. So from zero, Nas, do you do a lot of maths in regards to defensive and offensive profiles, and what is your biggest hitch, if any, when it comes to calculating or miscalculating a particular outcome? How much of this is vibes, Nas, and how much of this is study?
Are you more like on the Tom scale?
I'm a vibes
guy.
I do a lot of math before when I shoot stuff. Sometimes when a math is close, I'm just like, well, I've got to press the button and see what happens. And the game is at that board state. Like it's like I need to kill this weekend, for example. I was actually speaking with Matt earlier, another Team England applicant from Glasshammer. And he said, I've got my 20-man warrior in it, that's stealth and all of this. And I'm just like, yeah, it's a tough unit to kill. And I was like, what if I shoot a fully buffed got a silence and an objective though? And he's like, oh, like we did math for Bridgehead. I was like, no, I'm not Bridgehead though. I've got lethals. I don't have the plus on the wound, but I've got lethals. And I've got no melters, so I've got significantly more shots. So I've got lethals and sustained. And I'm just like, in my head, and I was doing the maths. I was like, it's pretty close. Like, you might live, but there's like a 40% chance that you also die. I might just take those odds, because if you're losing that unit is a big swing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So there's a lot of math that does go into it, especially for the more important activations. I think for almost all of the activations that I do into a certain unit, I am going to do maths on it and try to figure out what are the realistic odds of me removing that unit, how much I need to dedicate to it. Okay, what are the factors that could potentially go wrong? Okay, they can AOC, they can go to ground. Do I have a way to ignore cover? No. Probably go to ground, so that means all of my guns AP is reduced by 1 on that point. I'm like, okay, what save are they taking and what am I wounding them on? Like, a lot of those factors go into it, and sometimes swings happen. So like I try to calculate for around a swing down. So like if we say 50% is the average, I try to calculate for around 40%. So I'll always try to commit 10% more, because then that means I've committed 10% more. So I've committed 60% compared to 50%. So if that something does go wrong, even by 20%, I've still achieved my result. And if it swings down more than that, then that's an unfortunate swing. But it's not worth allocating even more resources to that activation and to deal with that.
Completely, yeah. And so we got some love for mental mass in the chat, and there's as I say, I think there are people who will have almost a down to the wound fix on what happens and outcomes, and I think so. Some people literally will calculate that. Some people will guesstimate. I definitely guesstimate. Rob's I've guesstimated pretty well sometimes though. Rob's seen me guesstimate for Incubi. I was very good at just knowing pretty much what pretty much on the nose. Was like, blend that, and it does.
Blend as well. Single shot weapons, they don't do maths.
Yeah, exactly. There are certain.
Don't shoot a Lancer, don't shoot Dark Lancer. It's something that, well, the math says I kill it because it's 4 shots. There are so many die points.
That's completely true. Like the lower volume and higher quality the shots get, the wilder it gets in terms of like the swinginess of the outcomes. Like volume is your friend if you want consistency, I think, in that sense. And I think the other, again, if you're a newer player, I think good rules of thumb are: is my strength higher? Is my AP enough to take this up its save beyond the sort of 50-50 saves? If you've got those things going on, that's immediately pushing you in the right direction. And then you can add to that, have I got rerolls to smooth out being, for example, lower strength? Then we're looking better, even if we're lower strength. That's something that makes that feel a lot better. Have I got rerolls to hit? Then stealth suddenly looks a lot better. It's just having an eye on what those things are that push you over the line against different defenses. And then I think also knowing, in terms of -1 damage or feel no pains, 2 wounds, all these little things that can trip up output, being conscious of those in your calculations and recognizing that feel no pain is going to absolutely carve off, a bunch of the wounds I'm trying to do, and all these different things as well. Craig Bedford says, sometimes the maths is hard, so find a good player who plays your army or the army you're against and ask them. I've done that lots of times. Yeah, it's an interesting one.
I've done that in game.
Have you asked in game?
Yeah.
We played ITT, played against James. He'd been coach at WTC for Iceland. He was a good player, played the matchup before. And I had a choice of it was either fire my purgations into this unit where I could see them and I'd be hitting on 3s, but I'd only reroll 1s to hit. Or I could be in my deployment zone, not see, and have full rerolls to hit on 4s. And I was like, What do you think is better here? And we kind of we chatted about it, and he'd experienced it before. So I think sometimes, like I know when I've played Jack Type many a times, I'm like, well, how many here do you think I kill?
Classic Jack Type, just talking through it like it's a sort of...
I'm like, how many do you think I kill here, Jack? Should we? And he's like, well, blah blah blah. And I'm like, cheers, Jack, cool. So I think actually quite often it is, especially if you've managed to find yourself in a game which is very much like that. We know full well not every game is, but quite often you do play those games where it is almost like you're not working together, but there's a lot of discussion.
You're learning together,
and you're playing this game to as high level as you can, and actually there is that discussion of, actually I think it's probably worthwhile doing this gun here or whatever. So definitely if you've got that sort of bond with your opponent, no reason at all why not to discuss it, because it's just statistics at the end. You're not getting necessarily advice, for sure. It's a statistic thing there.
Absolutely. Got another question in chat from Juicy40k, who I believe was on Fight Night a couple of weeks ago. So thanks very much, Juicy, who asks, what do you like about 20 Kriegers right now? Let's take that to you first, Rob. What do you like about 20 Kriegers right now?
I like when I played them at Bridgehead at ITT, I one-tapped them turn one with my court.
Yeah! Caught the outcome, baby. Sounds like someone let you get very close.
Yeah.
So talk us through the Krieg 20, man. Nas, what's the appeal of that unit?
Yeah, so I'm actually running 2 of those bricks for this weekend.
Nice.
Yeah, so the way that I see the 20-man Kriegers, right, is they present a unique situation to your opponent, and force a weird amount of commitment, because for 20 of them it's 130 points, so it's 6.5 points per model. They have 6 special weapons. I take flamers, 2 flamers, 2 plasma guns, and 2 plasma pistols of them, and you've got the medics. And realistically, it's toughness 3. Pardon me. A lot of the time with a 4+ save, because you order them for take cover, which gives them +1 to their armor save. So usually what I'll do, and because they're battle and they're OC2 base, so of them what I'll do is I will just advance them forward, because I'm playing combined, so they'll move 9 plus D6, and that's usually more than enough to get to a middle objective, like the center one, for example. Let's say we're playing UKTC on the Crucible board. I move them forward. I put 3 out, maybe 4 out, but we'll just say 3 out. And I'll have all of the others just be behind the wall. And then in my opponent's turn, I'll do an order to give them +1 save. So now they have 4 up save with cover, and there's 3 of them on the middle objective. And now what I'm telling my opponents is, oh yeah, you can shoot and probably kill a lot of this unit. You're not going to kill all of it in one activation. Maybe not even with a unit of scatter laser bikes, but you might. And if I do lose them, I've lost 130 points that I can then bring back. But then you've committed one of your key resources to kill them. So then you can't deal with the other 20 man and the 20 man that's coming back now, because that unit is going to come back to life if I can bring it. And I'm going to do that trick again. Or you commit a little bit stuff to the middle to try and flip the point, but it's 6 OC, so you've got, you can't just put 5 random infantry on it. You've got to put a bit more. And if you try to just kill some of the squad, but not all of it, I can bring back a D3 plus 1 model. So that's a minimum of 2 up to 4. And they can be OC, they can be ordered for OC3. So I'm forcing that weird board state of my opponent, where I'm hiding behind a wall, decently safe. I can potentially regroup to the objective. Not much going to one-tap them. You can send a melee unit in, and they'll probably kill them, but that means you need the volume of attacks to do that. It's 20 models with a 4+ save. Toughness 3, not super tanky. But then what I really like about them is that regrow, because that means basically each time you're bringing back a model, you're getting more out of your points value for that unit, because then you're bringing back more of those models. You're getting more value out of it. You're getting more movement out of it, because sometimes what I really like to do is they'll kill like 4 or 5 of them, like with some shooting. They won't charge anything in. And then what you'll do is you'll regrow. Then you'll give them move. Like, so they'll move 9 from where they were in that position, and like take up a lot of space so they can go tag or move block a lot of the board. And it's 130 points with a lot of OC special weapons, and you can have those units trade quite well into like a squad of Eldar. I've shot that unit into 10 boys, 10 snagger boys, and killed 8. And I'm just like, okay, I've killed 8 of the snagger boys, so there's 2 and the guy and the character left. So they're not going to kill this 20 man now. and then that kind of exists with it. So it's a very good objective and flank holder after a while.
Yeah, it's that disproportionate effort thing. It's like we were saying, it's an escalator. It's a bit of a party starter. There are so many ways in which you can handle the unit wrong, and almost no ways in which you can handle it right, because none of the actual solutions to it are things you actually want to do. None of the things you want to send to deal with it are things you want to send, and then that's obviously going to open up the retaliation. And then because Nas likes to break people emotionally, he's going to resurrect it anyway. So
exactly. I'm here to have a good. This is a single player game, right?
Yeah. Oh dear. Jack Tight says Nas has taught me that guns behind multiple 20 plus OC2 model units works good. Yeah, Jack, I'd actually like to talk to you at some point, because our very own Sam from 6 Plus came back having played you and went, there was literally no way I could beat Jack's list. It was absolutely impossible. I just couldn't. And I was just like, I was like, is there anything in how you played the game that maybe you could have adjusted or done differently? And I'd be very curious to know, Jack, if you think Sam lost at the list building stage, or if maybe there are a couple of things he could have played differently there to get the result out of you with his Blood Angels. Alrighty, we're going to go into the Discord, pull some questions out, but obviously do keep the questions coming in main chat as well. So we had a question from Mint. What's your advice for someone short on time to improve at 40k? I normally only have time for one game a week. Is there any way to compete without playing loads of games? What do we think, guys?
Yeah, one game a week is heaps. It's more than I play with a 3-year-old running around.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. So a lot of the time you want to make sure that you're getting like if you're limited on time, is that making sure that the time that you're spending is a good quality rep that you're playing against someone, whether you're going through a coach or through someone that 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 is like better than you. You always want to play someone that's at the same level or better than you, because that's how you improve. Like you don't improve by doing a pickup game and crushing someone, put them to the dirt. Especially if you want to improve, you want to play with people that are better than you, not immensely better than you, because then it's the same gap and it's quite hard to reach that. So
there's only so much learning you can do in a blowout,
exactly,
right? But
exactly. So you want to make sure. But yeah, I'd definitely say like playing with someone that is at around the same level, if not slightly better than you, that you can learn from, or like going to a coach like Tom over here. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Or indeed yourself, because are you coaching on Stat Check these days?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, so if you want to shoot people good or play Emperor's Children, I think Nas is your guy. I don't think there's anyone. I don't know many people in the world with as many Emperor's Children reps as this guy. So I think if you're interested in that box, you should definitely hit him up.
I'm on 15.
Yeah, hell yeah. So I think with the one game a week thing, I think as Rob says, that a lot of people outside of events barely play, and that's when they play, and one game a week is a luxury. I think it's a time frames thing as well. It's like you will get, if you play good quality games and you pay attention and you take note of what worked, what didn't work, how you can do better, little tweaks and twists at each stage. If you're making that genuine focused learning and actually taking away the right things from games, then every game is a next step in that sense, right? And it's not a case of you may get there a little bit slower than someone who's going to sit down and chain, I don't know, 10 games in a week or something bonkers. Like, it does happen. There are those sort of people at the top of the game are very, very hard to keep up with at that kind of rate, I think. But you can definitely be getting better, and you can definitely be moving in the right direction. So it's about how you think about every game and how you sort of critique and learn from it. So that's the key thing. Applied learning, and as Nas says, a coach will help you with that. Sort that right out. What else have we?
But both of you need to be on the same page. I think that's really important.
Hugely.
If you have your weekly game and you go down your club and you're like, I really want to learn and develop as a player, and the other guy just wants to roll dice or just wants to beat your face in or like whatever. Actually, I would love to play one game a week, to be fair, at this current stage. But if you were and you feel like that's not enough, then I think it should be more like a discussion based thing, kind of like having those games where you're trying to like work things out and how could we deal with this, and etc. And then if you do occasionally manage to play those almost cooperative games, you will have that opportunity. Like, I know that some of the best games of 40k I've played have been just doubles matches at doubles tournaments, because you're having your ideas, you're bouncing off, and you're coming to that unified approach. I think too often we just go, let's just play the game and let's just roll the dice and let's see what happens. And maybe you had fun, maybe you didn't actually learn anything. And if you're at a stage where you would rather be learning than just rolling dice because you want to do out an event, that has to be a collaborative effort with the people you're playing against as well.
100%. Yeah.
I know. For me, a big place where I leveled up my game was when I started playing with Ed Fawcett. So we'd play a game and we'd get to turn 3 and we'd just stop. You could see what was going on. You could see it was close, and we'd just stop and just talk about the game and have 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, just talking about what happened, what could happen, where it's going, and failure points and things that went well. And
he's very, very good.
Reflection is so big. You can't just walk away from a game going, "Oh, that was dice." You go, "Well, if those dice happened, did I have redundancy for that happening?"
That's my biggest pet peeve: dice.
Yeah,
dice. And this is it.
It's a dice game.
You've got to analyze the right things. You've got to take the right lessons, and you don't. The best way to stand still, as alluded to, would be to not have good expectations, not have practice partners that are on a similar wavelength to yourself, and also just blame the wrong things. And yeah. So I think those are all things. As long as your games are being played in that way, I think you'll crack on very rapidly. And as I say, plenty of players are very much just event players these days. They most of their reps are in events themselves, and that's when they actually play the most of the time. We had a question from King in Yellow saying, when learning a new army or after a new codex is released, do you ever start by playing smaller games, say 1K?
No.
To get a feel. I knew you would immediately shoot that down. To get a feel for the new army, detachment, data sheet rules, and unit synergies, or just jump straight into 2K games. Right, we're gonna have both sides of this. I'm gonna let you go first because you're the guest, and then I'm gonna attempt to defend 1K games. Off you go, Nas. Go.
All right. So, well, like it completely depends, right? Like if you're playing a little bit more in a casual setup or anything along those lines, then it's fine. It also depends on the point value that you usually play at, and for some people it's easier to digest it, but for me, it doesn't make too much sense trying out 1K because there's a whole other 1,000 points that I need then to figure out after that stage. It's much better putting a 2,000 point list together that has maybe different units. You get a feel for how those different units work together, or maybe don't work together, or which ones are better, which ones are better than others. Like my first try at Emperor's Children was dreadful. It was but it's that I was only able to figure it out because I put 2,000 points on the board. And I was like, all right, these units are actually not that great. I don't actually like Spawn. Controversial take. They're not that great. So I don't know, and especially for me, all of the games that I do play are 2,000 points, so I want to have a somewhat idea of how the list and the army is going to function with 2,000 points on the board. Because some lists get better as the more points you have. Some lists are better the less points you have. Like let's say you're playing 500 points, right? You take a big knight. Not many things are going to be a big knight for 500 points.
No,
there's no point.
Yeah,
the way
completely.
I see it. When it comes to that.
So I think that's right. I think once you're at the level where your sort of core skills are really bedded in, you can pick up data sheets quickly. You can pick up the character of an army very quickly. Playing at 2K makes sense because, as Nas says, the game isn't balanced.
It's just
outside of 2K.
Game.
It is wildly different. Completely different things work. The play patterns will be completely different. If you are at a level where what you are still doing is learning data sheets and just actually you need that time to just even be knowing what different units do and just get even the basics of your army down, and you're quite a way off being just jumping around between different things. And it's fine. I'd say local to me when I was first learning, we played lots of 1,000 points games, and they're really fun and they're a good way of learning just how units work and how the game works. But then the reality is, as alluded to, just you will take some of the wrong lessons. 1K isn't 2K; it's a different game. Completely, the units work in a completely different way. So it depends what your goal is. But once you're playing 2K very regularly, playing 1K will be for a fun, different exercise. It's not gonna give you useful lessons for 2K. And so that's why we won't see it done as much. Cool. I don't know how many others we had. Oh, it was a very good question from Quoke. A topic I don't think I've seen explored from a stats point of view is how to gauge how overboard to go in overcommitting units, as in how to play stats distribution and not just extracted value. So that comes down to overloading and sending. And this is we talk about this in the team all the time. I'm very curious your thoughts on this, and that's what your process is with this.
What, stat checking someone? Basically.
Yeah, full knowing when to send a whole bunch of stuff or when not to.
So usually, a few things go into that. One is my opponent's deployment is probably the biggest, how they've deployed. And one, am I able to apply enough, not necessarily damage, but pressure in those early parts of the board, early parts of the game where they are going to die by turn 2 or 3. Because like not last ITT, but I guess the ITT before that, I get a good example was I did it twice. I did it once in the mirror, and then I did it once vs the GSC, and in both those times it worked out very well because I identified, all right, if I send this forward and I guess best example was to give is like I played the mirror. It was still combined then because it was 3 ITTs ago before Bridget, and I was like, okay, if I'm going first here, my chimeras are now scout moving forward. I'm going to move them, and I'm going to charge my chimeras into his frontline infantry, and I'm going to use it, and I'm going to shoot the chimera into this other infantry unit. I've now crippled that infantry unit, charge and tag this infantry unit, and tank shock it, killed like a good chunk of it. The other chimera's done the same thing. I've move locked him in. Okay, now his Lumen Rusters can't actually leave his deployment zone too much, and I'm on all of the mid board. And I'm like, all right, cool. I've staged up. I'm on the mid board. Next, time I'm going to try and do that again. And then like I'm just trying to kill all of his forward presence units. Are actually going to play the mid board. Like he can have all of his Lumen Rusters alive. As long as those Lumen Rusters not getting unhooded in primary until turn 4, that's fine, and he's got nothing else that's alive at that point, then that's fine. Because then, sure, he's killing the units I'm sending at him, but he's also losing a lot of units himself because of the pressure I'm putting on. And all of that, I'm accruing a points lead while still having my damage assets. I'm just throwing away a lot of the assets that are my scoring assets or my mid-board scoring assets, and I'm using my Lumen Rusters to hold the primary now.
Yeah.
And also just figuring out like if I send my whole army at them, are they like can they handle it? Sometimes the answer is especially if they've reserved a lot off the board.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's big ingredients there. It's like obviously there is a lot of good incentive to do so, and sending can work really well in terms of it gets you control of the bit of the board where the points are, it gets you tempo, it gets you pressure in the game, and I guess it's like we said, it's knowing how the game goes if you don't versus if you do, and whether you think there's a better win path there. That's a big thing. Eldar's a great example, right? If you let Eldar be clever for 5 turns, it's really annoying, and your chances of winning that game drop off. So you have to be angry. You have to go and get them. You've got to make things happen because it doesn't work otherwise. And so it's the character matches. Exactly. Go kill them, make them dead, and then they won't be able to do their silly tricks.
Exactly, make them dead. Yes.
How about you, Chris? Or any tips for knowing when to send it?
That's not really in my vocabulary.
I was going to say I don't think I've ever seen either of you ever send it in your lives. No, that's not true. Rob can send. Rob sends sometimes.
I used to 9th edition. I used to play Inari in the 9th edition. That was like kind of the only time I played a send list. And that was fun, you know. But it was a formula for me. I quite like to find formulas or be a reactive player. And I think because nowadays I only really play teams, and I've only been playing Grey Knights who are just trying to take the trickier matchups and blunt them. So I've just trained myself that risk taking isn't worth it. And obviously, like I'm in the position where if I send out my army and it dies and I just lose because I don't have any backups with an elite army like Grey Knights. So for me, I've got to try and keep my resources alive, and I absolutely hate it when my opponent starts running at me. I'm like, no, go on. I've always played armies which like let me do my thing and I'll run around you. And you've come at me. And actually, like at ITT, I played 4 games of just hiding and praying. It was actually quite refreshing when we played against one of the Warmasters teams. I played into James's Solar Spearhead, and there was just all these dreadnoughts in front of me. And I was like, I really want to run away right now, but I don't feel like I can. So I just had to try and kill it. And it was genuinely the most fun game of the weekend, just because I was forced into a position where I had to be proactive. And it worked out. But obviously, if it doesn't, then as in a team setting, if you're the guy that's trusted to get a close game and you decide to push and it suddenly blows up and you don't get that can cost your team the round.
Yeah, exactly.
There
was a nice tip from Craig Bedford in the chat. He said utilizing speculative advances, and this is a classic. And I'm sure we've all played against someone with this. They've got like advance and charge on their army.
Just see what I get.
I'll just see what I get on this one. And you're like, well, he'll go over there. Just see what I get on this one. Oh, that's a 6 as well. I will send it. I will send the whole thing. It's all good. So it's like it's just It's so annoying.
Definitely how I'll go some of my practice games of Emperor's Children.
I bet you've been playing that all the time.
I'm going to disembark this free man just because I'm really like so I'm just going to disembark this Lord squad and staging behind this wall here. But let me see what I roll my advance mark. Oh, I rolled a 6. Charge.
Go time.
Oh, the 4 charge. Oh, you know what? I'll go for that. I'll do that.
Yeah. It's just the speedy armies, which are often the best at sending it. It's all about just seeing if you're like, oh, there's a real domino effect on here. We're gonna.
I think you need to try it as well. Like I'm a very passive player, and I tried it at ITT. I went in completely cold with Reaper's Wager, which you have to play super aggressive with.
It's a very aggressive detachment.
I was sending 600 points into my opponent's deployment zone turn 1. I was like, what the fuck am I even doing? It's a very different feeling. You just have to do it and see what it achieves. And like Nas was saying, when you do full send, you don't have to kill the big scaries.
Just kill everything.
Just kill everything else, and then I think I played Mortai in round 5. He moved 3 inches the entire game. 5 turns. There's lots of things you can do. Let's try this practice.
It takes practice, but creating a bit of chaos is excellent in 10th edition. So I think it's definitely just knowing when to find those situations. Right, final question for tonight is from our very own beloved Ultimate Funk, who asks, when and why would you sell an army? What would be good reasons for pulling the plug on an army? Because they're considering moving on from Orc so they can collect something with a bit more focus than he did. Obviously, this is an army he's had since he was a teenager, so the collection's a bit of a mess. What do you guys think? Have you sold any armies, Nas?
Dude, I barely have an army.
No, I was going to say. No. He doesn't really know.
Like an army that I have is not guard because I've been collecting it for a while, and like I've got like Space Marines, chunks of Space Marines. But I
bet you got some Iron Hands drop pods somewhere, right?
I do. Like I was looking at it was a gold drop pod, bit of purple, and there was like Devastators nearby, and I was like, damn, dude, I remember simpler times.
That's the first time I ever saw you play. Was when you did the old Iron Hands drop pod to Manny, and everything exploded, and he died real fast.
Everything died. It was great.
It was really good. What do you guys think? So in terms of selling projects, I mean, Rob, Chris, have you moved on from an army at any point, and what rationale have you?
I've sold a few now, and I think it's very easy for some of us to become sentimentally attached to armies. Be it like you enjoyed them a certain period of time. Or maybe you did like a great paint job on them, or that sort of thing. And let's face it, there's always that, what if they suddenly get good and I want to play them? And I think once you've had that experience of the books come out and they've been good and you haven't wanted to play them, I think that's then probably the time. So for me personally, I have got my armies like Custodes. Like that is one of my first armies. I'm not interested in selling that, and I do like to play them as and when. Obviously, I've got a big Eldar collection that I enjoy using. I've got my Grey Knights, but Necrons was an army that I really love playing in 8th edition. I've played them a few other moments in 9th and 10th, but realistically, they've been really fun and really successful in 10th.
Oh yeah,
I played them at the first time I could play them. When they were a bit ridiculous at Nottingham with the old canoptic court stuff. But other than that, there's just been no incentive. So I literally sold them like last week. And the next on the chopping block is AdMech, because I reckon if I put in enough time and effort, I reckon AdMech would be, they're a very good army.
Oh, they'd be good.
But I just don't have any incentive. Like, there's nothing about them which is drawing them to me. Even when they were broken as fuck, I didn't actually particularly enjoy like the play style. I only enjoyed them the most at the very end of 9th, playing that service because it was very much toned down. But it was a fun experience with those big blocks and stuff, etc. It was actually good fun. But I don't intend on coming back to them. And so for me, it's they're good, but actually I don't really want to play them. Then that probably means it's time to move on.
Yeah, I think that's the killer thing, right? If you can't see yourself playing them, and even if they have good rules and you're still not even remotely excited, then that's usually a pretty good sign. I think in the question itself, he mentioned that he'd collected them when he was a teenager, and that it's all different styles. This for me has been a big one in the last couple of years. Actually, the armies I'm happy to move on from it's when they've been thrown together, when it was, I wasn't painting as well, different stage of hobby, or like they were cobbled together in different ways, or I changed paint schemes, those sorts of things. At that stage, it often feels like, I don't feel like the same attachment, so I'm much happier to move models on and whatever else. But what I will say, the cautionary tale is that with the way the game now is, everything seems to suddenly become good within about 3 months of you getting rid of it. I had like a whole bunch of Slanesh Demons in my garage. And I was like, they're not painted. I'm never going to do Slanesh Demons. Can't be arsed. I literally sold them, and then they were broken as all hell for like 6 months. And that's just how it works. That's just literally how the game works now. Like, you never know what's going to happen.
Don't sell if you're just interested in whether they're good or bad now.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be interested in the army.
100%. It's got to be an army you're excited about, I think. The strength changes so quickly now.
I think for me, I don't think I've never sold any of my stuff, and that's because I'd go into the hobby as a hobbyist first. So I've spent so much time.
Loser.
Love on that Drakari meta train.
Yeah. Early 10th meta train. But yeah, it's the time investment for me. I don't think I'd ever move an army on. I'd rather put it in a box, and if it gets good or interesting later. The Space Marines I took to 2 events in the last 3 months, they were stripped models from my childhood.
Yeah.
I've got original assault intercessors as JPIs. I don't think I can move them on.
No, for sure. And as I say, you have a very sort of nice and fully rounded relationship with the armies that you play, right? And I think those are the ones. Those ones you have that attachment to are the ones that you don't tend to ever be thinking about selling, I think. Craig Bedford asked what your favourite EC detachment, Nas.
Coterie. What do you have?
It is Coterie. It's Coterie. Coterie seems to be the spice. We've recorded an Emperor's Children first reaction video with our very own Lee Churchwood, and he'll take you through it. But he also is pretty excited about the Coterie. But
rerolls. It's pretty good. Yeah. Pretty important one.
Yeah, turns out rerolls quite good. Wonderful. And then we have a late entry question from Theo. I don't know when this snuck in. What do you hope for the balance data slate tomorrow for Guard? It's already too late because NAS is playing Emperor's Children, so it's not going to save me. Whatever they do to Guard tomorrow or any other day isn't going to save me because NAS is already on to the next thing. So it's already too late, and that's why NAS is as good as he is, because it doesn't matter what a slate's doing. It's not going to save you. He's going to kill you with something else instead. But yeah, it'd be nice to see maybe slightly less ordinary humans that shoot with the efficiency of a Custodes captain. I'd love to see less of that.
Whoa. Well, they went to school, right? They read the books. Okay? They know what they're doing. Okay, the Schola Progenium is what it's called. Very much, sir. Fucking hell.
Unbelievable, right? On that note, we will call it a day. Nas, thank you for coming on. You've been wonderful. This has been really, really good fun. Thank you to all of you for tuning in, and we'll be back again very soon. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.